There is something real here.
Did you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had people with the first-hand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General. Biologics came to some of these recoveries.
Those could represent exquisite new adversary technology.
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still in the program.
The government is covering up some level of its knowledge and understanding about what some of those things are.
The Sol Foundation, which just announced a new initiative for UFO research and policy.
It's nuts, man. I mean, we're just small-town buds who saw a UFO in the woods. I mean, now we're hanging out with the government.
Wow. What floor were you guys on?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live edition of Anomaly Now, straight out of Austin, Texas. I'm Smiles Lewis, and this is the weekly live news media roundup for the 501c3 Scientific Anomaly Institute, aka the Anomaly Archives, located, as I said, here in Austin, Texas. Thank you for joining me on this Wednesday evening. If you're listening to this or watching this live, this is the November 20th, 2024 episode. And more UFO UAP news to get through and lots of other great stuff. So let's dive right in. Of course, you can visit our website, anomalyarchives.org, or go to their link through there to our Flipboard. As always, a ton of great stuff. Oh, Greg Agigian's got a public access, I think, show talk coming up. Greg Agigian on unraveling the history of the UFO phenomena at the Pell Center. Air dates November 18th through 24th. You can find links to that over at pellcenter.org and via the Flipboard. Also, Tanner Boyle's got a good new reading list, Getting Spooked blog, reading list number 4. Man, Tanner's one of those new people on the UFO scene, one of the young voices that I really appreciate and highly recommend. He's over at Substack. That's the Getting Spooked blog. And so much other news here, but I'm going to just dive right in. Of course, the big news, of course, was these two recent UAP UFO hearings. We're just getting caught up on. There was the one on November 13th, and now this one that was on November 19th over at the defense.gov website, DoD Examining Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena by David Vergan. And there you can find the link to the actual PDF of the Defense Department All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office Fiscal Year 2024 Annual Report on UAP with the cutoff date of June 1st, 2024. This is a 18-page report. Really have not dived into this, but you can get some good analysis, of course, from our good friend and excellent journalist in the UFO paranormal scene, Micah Hanks, over at his micahhanks.com. His November 14th blog, his November 14th podcast show, as well as his article over at the Debrief. Former officials warn lawmakers of alleged secret UAP programs operating beyond congressional oversight. This is coverage of that November 13th congressional hearing. Highly recommend you go check that out, both the podcast and the article. And it's been getting quite a bit of news, as has the other more recent hearing that we'll get to in just a second. But over at military.com, new Pentagon report on UFOs includes hundreds of new incidents, but no evidence of aliens. Okay, whatever. Yeah, we know that that's going to be the line that's taken here. There was, of course, a closed special access for certain press meeting with the new director, John Kozlowski of Arrow, and John Greenwald Jr. over at the Black Vault has published a transcript of that consolidated annual report on UAP from November 14th. Have not had a chance to dive into that either, but there it is for you. Thank you, John Greenwald. Meanwhile, again, continuing the coverage of these events. Again, Micah Hanks over at micahhanks.com for his report on the Arrow report, and also talking about the Immaculate Constellation controversy. I was chagrined at one point. He does do what so many of us are doing, said Immaculate. Not constellation, but conception. Immaculate conception, immaculate constellation. And then, of course, he's also reporting over at the debrief again. We do have some very anomalous objects, quote unquote, says new director of Pentagon's UAP investigations, talking to lawmakers. So what was discussed? Well, you know, I already gave last week my brief analysis reportage on that, but there were two clips that are from after that congressional hearing that I wanted to play for folks. And actually, it was Micah's podcast that clued me into this. And when I went and searched for it, it's from Forbes Breaking News Now, talking to Rep. Luna. And I think you might find these clips of interest. Here we go.
No, did you know that Matt Gaetz, one of the founding members of the UAP caucus here in Washington, is now going to be the AG? Mike Waltz is now the National Security Advisor, also gavelled in to come to the UAP hearings. So, and then Marco Rubio has been a big advocate for disclosure, and he's now the Secretary of State. And so I think exciting things for our country in that regard. But, you know, look, I've always looked at it through a scientific lens and perspective. You know, when you have many people coming forward from the State Department, from NSA, from different government agencies, from the military, stating that UAPs are real, and then you have this aspect of technological advancements. For us, it is a national security issue to ensure that we know what's happening, but also, too, I think it's silly from a mathematical perspective and also a religious perspective to think that human beings are the only creation that God did create. And so, as you know, we have a big galaxy, and there's many galaxies out there. And so to put it in perspective, do I think we're alone? No. Am I very curious? Yes. Has it been fun to kind of help tailor and conduct these committees? Absolutely. And I think we're going to continue to push forward with more committees here into the 119th Congress. So that's not the clip that Micah Hanks played. I'm going to play that in just a second. But Micah has written an article kind of focusing on what she was alluding to at the very beginning, which is this idea that, wow, there's whether or not all these people get confirmed with regard to President-elect Trump's new appointees. There are a number of these folks that he has put forward who have been part of this UFO caucus, this bipartisan, but mostly in the case of that November 13th UAP hearing, the mostly conservative, right-leaning conservative Republican contingent. And that really stood out. And as I commented, Rep. Bobert, whatever the heck her name is, had only asked questions of Michael Schellenberger, even as she was asking very specific questions that would be much more apropos for retired Naval Admiral Tim Gallaudet. But anyway, this is just, there's a lot going on here. And of course, this other clip is what he actually played, which he's, as I said, Mike has been very critical in a very respectful way, I think, of the issues surrounding Lou Elizondo. And here's the clip from, again, Rep. Luna that kind of takes a jab at Mr. Elizondo. What I will state is yesterday, was I a little bit disappointed And some of the responses from the witnesses, yes, we got some great stuff, but I'm not interested in hearing about people's books. I'm interested in hearing about whether or not people can answer the questions, because we are trying to get this into the archives so that people have access to the information. And so I wish there was a little less pitching and more talking.
Less pitching of some book. Now, whatever. Anyway, moving on to this more recent congressional hearing. There was these closed, open, was it open, is it closed hearing orchestrated by Gillibrand, and via the man, I am just sorry, my brain is not right. The Defense Armed Services Committee. Yeah, I just can never get these committee names straight. But it was interesting. It was definitely not as controversial in terms of talk of recovered craft, reverse engineering, biologics, all that. But that's fine, because this was this was the new head of Aero, Kozlowski, giving his report to Congress, and basically summarizing what's in, I guess, this June report. And there were some interesting things in there, not least of which was their debunking of a very famous case that's in some ways already been debunked by various skeptic groups that I'm involved with, as well as, of course, Mick West, and that is the Aguadilla, Puerto Rico case. And this is one of two slides that Kozlowski showed during the hearing, where they were giving examples of cases that they feel they've solved versus cases that they feel they have not. And they come to the same conclusion that most of the skeptics have, that this is two balloons, Chinese lanterns or something, connected, staying close together, and that kind of through a parallax effect and other similar visual effects is considered to be going faster and doing things that it's not actually doing. This really does match up with the other work, like I say, of this the skeptics groups that I've been involved with, and Mick West. And they, again, just basically come to the conclusion that there's no there. And that this idea that it's a trans-medium object that went into the water and came back out and is, able to fly and submerge, that's not in fact what happens. Their explanation for that is that the temperature of the object, of the lanterns or balloons or whatever they were, was matching the temperature of the ocean behind it, and so it just made it appear that it was going into the water. Obviously, believers who want this to be some evidence of some non-human intelligence are going to, or some kind of exotic technology are not going to agree with that. Similarly, they debunk, again, as others have, the famous Go Fast video, one of the naval videos that was spirited to freedom by Chris Mellon and Zonda. And again, they're just saying it's parallax, that this is most likely something that was higher up than believed originally. There are the two slides for that. I don't know. I've never been that impressed by any of that footage. And again, for me, the UFO phenomenon does not hinge on any one piece of evidence, let alone this recent post 2017 wave. And of course, at least one of the videos was leaked onto the internet back in 2014. But we'll see. We'll see where this goes. Maybe somebody will come up with some dramatic explanation for how Aguadilla, Puerto Rico case UFOs are in fact anomalous. But all right. And I thought, where are those other clips? Okay, so so at this more recent at this week's UAP hearing hosted by Gillibrand, We've got a couple of clips here, each about a minute long. So check this out.
Given the public's growing concern and interest in UAPs, how do you balance the need for the transparency that our public is demanding with the potential risks of revealing classified defense information?
Yeah, that's always a concern that's on the front of our minds. We want to make sure that we're deconflicting both on potential U.S. programs and what the IC might be tracking for adversarial programs as we're aggregating that information and preparing to share it. However, oftentimes we can remove the discussion of the unidentified and anomalous activity from the sensitive information that our partners are concerned with.
Well, isn't that what we've been asking? Isn't that what you're not doing? And I don't, by you, I don't mean him. And at some point, I believe Kozlowski says that they aren't really the ones trying to do the declassification, that they're working with these other agencies to arrive at explanations or to make things more available and transparent for the public. But again, this issue of transparency, this issue of declassification, this issue of people like John Greenwald Jr., who for decades have been on a daily basis trying to get this information, pry it loose from the military-industrial complex. And, you know, it's been done before, and it can be done here again. They show clips in this hearing where they've blotted out the things that would hypothetically compromise the source, or that might be things that in other instances would have been cited as why they can't release it for national security reasons. So there are ways of redacting that. And so it's nice to hear this, but I'm not sure whether to believe it or not. I will say I get a better vibe from this fellow Kozlowski than Kirkpatrick. Kirkpatrick seemed a lot slicker, more slippery. Here's another clip that I think goes to some of the interesting directions that the Aero office could go.
And then without having to explain the UAP, what do we need to begin really doing about them? What precautions can we take? What should we be doing about them?
I think that removing the stigma, reducing the stigma is the first step. We need to make sure that we're having honest and transparent conversations about them, because if we're hesitant to discuss them, then it opens the opportunity for an adversary, as you had mentioned earlier, Senator Gillibrand, to come in and conduct some activity. So we need to do that, and we need to have more persistent monitoring and understand that whether it is a UAP or a counter UAS issue, that we need to have that complete domain awareness around our national security facilities.
Wonderful. Has Aero involved academia? Have you gone to universities? Do you have outside organizations that you are working with? And if so, can you walk us through some of that collaboration?
Sure. Right now, most of our collaborations that are veering towards academia are with university-affiliated research centers associated with universities or with FFRDCs. Our partnership with universities, I would say, is lacking right now. We have some one-off associations with university professors. However, that's our fault, and it's largely because of the need to declassify data. We need to give the professors something to work on before we can really engage them. So we're working significantly on declassification efforts.
So I think that's pretty optimistic and positive. We'll see where that goes. Lastly, there's this one other clip I was going to play. My
final question is there anything that you need to tell the Senate that you need from us, whether it's funding, whether it's support, whether it's legislation? Is there any requests that Aero has of us, or anything else you need to brief us on for us to be able to do our jobs to protect our service members, as well as integrate public interest and public data and information into the future analysis efforts of Aero?
So first of all, I want to say thank you again. I think that the authorities that we have are remarkable, and I think that we are well-resourced as an office. The only ask that I would have is that you continue to champion us, particularly with witnesses, encourage them to come forward and report to us so that we can have a more fulsome investigation of the potential historic or ongoing legacy programs.
Thank you so much.
So, yeah, it was not as near as sensational a hearing as the others have been because there weren't these counter narrative witnesses, experts, military folks who have a stake in the game because they've either heard the stories, seen the evidence, or had experiences themselves. But that wasn't the nature of this this hearing. This was intended as this new office of the government that's been stood up to deal with this, as so many of its predecessors have. So basically, Arrow is, as I'm sure you've all thought, the new Project Blue Book. And is it any surprise that we aren't getting amazing revelations from it, that we're getting contradictions to what we've heard endlessly for decades? Is the alleged real story going on? Nobody should be surprised, but we'll see. I reserve judgment, but I have long said I've never expected the truth to come out of the mouth of some government representative, unless it's pulled tooth and nail with them kicking and screaming, and even then, you should always be suspicious. But that's just me. That's my paranoid take on it. Well, moving on to some other fun stuff. Flashback here to, like I mentioned, Tanner Boyle's blog, Getting Spooked, over at tannerfboyle.substack.com. I think I came across this. He had reposted this link on his new Blue Sky account, and this is actually from December of 2022, so this is not something recent. And I don't even think I finished reading this, but I was so enjoying it. It just really, Tanner's writing style and his breadth of knowledge and our similarity of interests really causes me to want to promote and support his work, as I have been doing. In this article, Countdown to the Apocalypse, Tim McVeigh, The X-Files, Bill Cooper, and That Darn Doty, is a very fun article. I highly recommend it. And I had completely forgotten about this aspect of the first X-Files movie, the Fight the Future feature film, which features, as can be seen here, this imagery of a blown out federal building, or that imitates or is mirroring the Oklahoma City Murrah Federal Building bombing. And as he says, this is pretty brazen, as he says. The brazenness of modeling the fictional bombing of a federal building with a real-life tragedy that occurred 2 years earlier is impressively bold, but even more so when the X-Files Fight the Future's version of the bombing is a false flag attack, an attempt to conceal the victims of a recently unleashed alien virus. The X-Files series, while no stranger to the conspiratorial, amplifies the connections to real-world conspiracy culture in the feature film by including a character seemingly modeled on Milton William Cooper. An early spreader of UFO community disinformation, Cooper is a major through line from UFO enthusiasts to the militia movement and was an early proponent of the theory that the OKC bombing was a false flag attack, as explored by painting. Cooper's Behold a Pale Horse, quote, amalgamated nearly the entire history of UFO alien narratives that had been circulating in fringe subcultures for quite some time, unquote, sharing rhetoric with, quote, patriot, militia, and white supremacist communities. Painting notes that Cooper made the rounds in those circles as well, eventually focusing more on that conspiratorial angle, quote, after the UFO crowd began to scorn and debunk him. Furthermore, like the X-Files, Cooper was a major influence on McVeigh. When, quote, when his attorneys asked him what public figures might help them understand his way of thinking, William Cooper was one of the people McVeigh said they might want to talk with. They also apparently, he also suggested that they watch the X-Files. This whole article starts with a reference to a book that I was only made aware of, I guess, last year around this same time. So it's just about a year ago. Wendy S. Painting's 2016 book, Aberration in the Heartland of the Real, The Secret Lives of Timothy McVeigh. This is a monumental work, apparently, on the weirdnesses surrounding the Oklahoma City bombing. And while this article isn't about that, it cites that, and it reminds me that I need to go back and continue listening to that book. But there's just a lot of other great background information here. And it just goes to show that, again, I only became aware of Tanner Boyle's blog and writing in the last year and a half. And this, of course, was 2 years ago, this article. So still lots of great stuff to read over at his blog that might interest our listeners. Now, jumping back specifically to the UFO thing, just briefly, we've got these 2 articles on those mystery shoot downs in Canada. Remember those post-Chinese spy balloon? Well, 2 headlines, one from CTV News, police in Canada collected wreckage after object shot down over Lake Huron. And then we've got this other one over at the dailymail.co.uk. Police collect wreckage of quote-unquote octagonal-shaped UFO shot down by a U.S. F-16 fighter jet. Now, if I'm remembering from reading these articles, most likely it appears that they believe this was a weather balloon. So they shot down some corporation's weather balloon, allegedly. This is just one of the multiple shoot downs that occurred around the same period of time. I doubt we'll ever get anything definitive, but maybe this information will slowly leak out, and hopefully there will be somebody digging more deeply into this and hopefully finding some interesting revelations. Okay, shifting gears here. You like poltergeist, right? There's this new paper that's published through the Journal of Scientific Exploration, the JSE. That's the Society for Scientific Exploration's journal, and it's over at ResearchGate, a detailed phenomenology of poltergeist events. So you can download the PDF here. The abstract reads, opening line, the objective of this paper is to propose a reference point in the phenomenology of poltergeist, either for people who want to know more about these phenomena or for researchers looking for cases and sources associated with some particular phenomenon. In parallel, an ongoing work is conducted aimed at building a global case repository of poltergeist cases with their phenomenological characteristics and their sources, which will be available soon at website macropk.org, macropk.org. A historical view of the 50-plus qualitative and quantitative studies of the poltergeist phenomena is presented along with different authors, researchers, and the publications associated. Again, this is available over at researchgate.net for download. And who doesn't like poltergeist phenomena? Nobody likes experiencing it, I don't think. But reading about it's another thing, right? And I'm immediately thinking of Jeff, the 8th wonder of the world. That talking mongoose. He was a poltergeist, wasn't he? Okay. Over at Medical Express, medicalexpress.com. Memories are not only in the brain, human cell study finds. An NYU researcher administers chemical signals to non-neural cells growing in petri dishes. It's common knowledge that our brains, and specifically our brain cells, store memories, but a team of scientists has discovered that cells from other parts of the body also perform a memory function, opening new pathways of understanding how memory works and creating the potential to enhance learning and to treat memory-related afflictions. We've all seen the science fiction horror movies about transplanting not just an organ, but the memories, nay, evil intentions of their previous hosts. quote, learning and memory are generally associated with brains and brain cells alone, but our study shows that other cells in the body can learn and form memories too, explains New York University's Nikolay V. Kukushkin, the lead author of the study, which appears in the journal Nature Communications. The research sought to better understand if non-brain cells help with memory by borrowing from a long-established neurological property, the masked-spaced effect, which shows that we tend to retain information better when studied in spaced intervals rather than a single intensive session, better known as cramming for a test. Have not had the chance to really dive into this and figure out what the heck that's all about, but meat memory. Okay, over at timeoutdubai.com. Weather warfare, UAE could use AI to increase cloud seeding. Yes, we continue reporting on the weather modification efforts involved in classic cloud seeding. Well, now Dubai wants to or is using AI software to help them in their efforts to green the desert, to bring the rains. There was, of course, the conspiracy theories surrounding the idea that their cloud seeding operations had resulted in recent flooding that happened over in the Middle East in their specific area. And most researchers who are following closely say, no, that wasn't the case. There wasn't actually a correlation there. But there's just some more news there that you can digest if you're interested. And keeping with AI, over at 404media.co, HarperCollins confirms it has a deal to sell authors' work to AI company. Apparently, authors are getting emails saying, hey, just so you know, you can get a check in a small amount now, and we're going to use your material if you consent. I don't know if this is actually a consent request, but this says the Big Five publisher made a deal with an unnamed quote-unquote artificial intelligence technology company and is allowing authors to opt in if they want to join the agreement, basically trying to undo what has already been done of so much trawling of the internet for material to force to help the learning of these AI large language models. That over at 404media.co. And I didn't really hear much about this, but mysanantonio.com reports rare 3.8 magnitude earthquake rattles San Antonio area town. It's unusual for earthquakes to hit this part of Texas. Reported by Zachary Taylor Wright, trending digital reporter. A shockwave was sent through a Texas town about 40 miles south of San Antonio Thursday afternoon, November 14th. Responses are coming into the United States Geological Survey website showing the 3.8 magnitude earthquake in south central Texas was felt miles away from its epicenter. Earthquakes near San Antonio are becoming a more common occurrence in the past few years, though they're still fairly rare. Still fairly far and few between. However, a decent-sized quake just shook Pleasanton, Texas, Thursday just before 1 p.m., a small Texas town south of the Alamo City, according to responses on the USGS website asking who felt the earth shake. Residents as far as 100 miles away in Corpus Christi could feel the shock waves of the earthquake. Plus, a few folks in San Antonio up to 50 miles away felt the impact as well. That is interesting. I'm again wondering, is this something related to fracking or not? Let's see. While many will point the finger at fracking and the oil and gas industry, the cause of the 3.8 magnitude quake will take some time through an investigation by the USGS. There's evidence that earthquakes are on the rise in the region, which may be a man-made problem. Oh, yeah. Before I go to this last couple of articles here, let's see what I can find here. Didn't I? Yes, here we go.
Gillinger, Dr. Henry Gillinger. And this is my magic murder bag.
That damned Dr. Gillinger. That's Henry Kissinger, right? Right. Over at the Kirkus Reviews, we have news about this new book printed posthumously. Wait a minute. Is that the right one? There we go. Genesis, Artificial Intelligence, Hope, and the Human Spirit by Henry Kissinger, Eric Schmidt, and Craig J. Mundy. Unsettling thoughts on AI from some big league thinkers. Astute, if often oddball insights, the subheadline says. The book opens with a worshipful tribute to Kissinger. I threw up a little in my throat. Who died last year at age 100. He apparently thought deeply about this subject and, quote, closely mentored his two collaborators on the, quote, diplomatic alignment of humans, unquote, in their relationship to AI. You can find out more about Henry Kissinger, Dr. Kissinger. But what brought my attention to this article, to this book, was this article over at the Washington Times, not the most reputable website for news, but Kissinger's final warning: prepare now for superhuman people to control Earth. And the article by Ryan Lovelace starts, humanity must begin preparations to no longer be in charge of Earth because of artificial intelligence, according to a new book from the late statesman Henry Kissinger and a pair of the country's leading technologists. The rise of AI creating quote-unquote superhuman people is a major topic of concern in Genesis, published Tuesday by Little Brown and Company. It's the quote-unquote last book from Kissinger, according to the publisher's parent company, Hachette. Kissinger was a longtime U.S. diplomat and strategist who died last year at age 100. Let's see. This conjures so many Skynet future dystopian ideas. In a section titled Coevolution, Artificial Humans, the three authors encourage people to think now about, quote, trying to navigate our role when we will no longer be the only or even the principal actors on our planet. Quote, biological engineering efforts designed for tighter human fusion with machines are already underway. Current efforts to integrate humans with machine include brain-computer interfaces, a technology that the U.S. military identified last year as of the utmost importance. Such interfaces allow for a direct link between the brain's electrical signals and a device that processes them to accomplish a given task, such as controlling a battleship. Dr. Killinger, I presume.
Dr. Henry Killinger, and this is my magic murder bag.
Sorry. Not a fan of that evil man. The opinions expressed by this guy here do not necessarily reflect those of the board of directors of this nonprofit. But meanwhile, last two links here. I often reference, or maybe I should often reference, the QAnon Anonymous podcast. I really like a lot of their work, even as I have often been critical of their derisiveness of people with conspiratorial ideas. I actually think they are very conspiratorial themselves, and they like to have fun with these ideas because otherwise it would drive us all insane. In the wake of the election, they've been trying to go a little lighter, according to this episode. Now, you have to be a Patreon member to listen to the full episode. I finished it today, really enjoyed it. This episode is about an ARG, an alternate reality game surrounding the TV series Lost. You might remember from like 2004 to 2006, I think. The text for this episode, which you can hear a sample of over at this link at Patreon or Spotify and SoundCloud. Quote, I tried to think of the most harmless thing, something I love from my childhood, something that could never ever possibly destroy us. Lost. Of course, that's a reference to Ghostbusters, I believe, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And I was wrong. This week, Jake strands the co-hosts and listeners on a small, dangerous island and dissects the Lost alternate reality game from 2006 in an effort to steer the show away from politics and conspiracy theories. In these trying times, Jake has inadvertently uncovered the inconvenient truth that TV shows and their advertisers may have primed us for QAnon. And I must say, as much as I have been a critic, sounding the warning bell about the dangers of alternate reality games as far back as 2000, 2001 with the Majestic ARG. They really do a good job here as usual, and they explicate how several key elements of the modern QAnon conspiracy culture have their predecessors in things like this lost ARG. Highly recommend you take a listen if you dare. And lastly, why is this not showing here? Okay. So you heard about the Onion buying Alex Jones's InfoWars, right? Of course, Alex Jones is the hated conspiracy theorist here in Austin, Texas. And the news was heard around the world that the Onion, in connection with the Sandy Hook families, had bought InfoWars as part of the auction to have him pay back the $1+ billion court ruling against him and his media empire. And in fact, the day this all went down, he was reporting on it, and they went off the air, and then they came back on the air from a different studio, and he continued reporting on what was happening. He has, of course, continued to report on what's happening because the very next day, within 24 hours, the studio was reopened, the lights were turned back on, and he was told, allegedly, take a drink, that it had all been done improperly, and that he is coming back with a vengeance. Meanwhile, you've got a few news outlets covering, retracting, adding updates to those articles about the fact that apparently it's not a done deal, or at least it's not a done deal yet. So don't wait for Dr. Jacoby to start his new Alex Jones InfoWars show, Twin Peaks reference. This article over at, where is this? lawandchaospod.com. Not familiar with this news outlet, but no, Elon Musk isn't riding to Alex Jones's rescue. However, it has been reported by Brother Jones and other news outlets that, in fact, Elon Musk's and X's media lawyers have entered into the case that they want to be appraised as things proceed, and the judge overseeing this case has said that there may have been improper actions taken on the part of the people doing the auction. Suffice to say, apparently this was not a quote-unquote true auction in the sense of going to the highest bidder, but rather was decided by the person in charge of the estate and helping the Sandy Hook family victims to pick the best bid, quote unquote. And the best bid they thought was the lower bid involving the families and the Onion, as opposed to the higher bid by the friends of Alex Jones, who apparently had banded together to win the auction. We'll see how this all pans out. I am no lawyer. I don't understand all the details, but this person I thought gave an interesting, balanced assessment of the situation, even as they obviously, like so many people, really hate Alex and everything he stands for and everything he is alleged to have done, who has been convicted of doing, or what have you. Anyway, make of that all what you will. I hope you've had an interesting evening, and you can like and subscribe. We really appreciate any support you can give. You can go to patreon.com/Anomaly Archives or anomalyarchives.org and find the many ways that you can help us. And that's going to be it for this evening, and we'll be back next week. So thank you, and
Dr. Henry Killinger, and this is my magic murder bag.